My name doesn't matter. What matters is the place I came from, and the place I ended up. I grew up in a small mountain town buried under snow for half the year. Winters were long and unforgiving. The air always smelled of pine and wood smoke, and the silence of the snow could make a man feel both safe and suffocated at once. My father worked as a laborer, my mother taught in the local schoolhouse. Life in our house was simple. Too simple. I wanted more. Like most boys who stare too long at the mountains, I craved a way out. I wanted to prove myself, to find discipline, strength, and purpose beyond the little frozen streets of my childhood. When the Army recruitment officers came through, I didn't hesitate. I signed my name. My mother cried when I told her. My father just nodded, the way fathers do when they understand but won't say it aloud. And I, young, restless, and eager, felt proud. That pride carried me through the train ride north, through the ferry that cut across black waters, and finally into the remote training camp where my life would change forever. The camp was an island in the snow, swallowed by storms and silence. We were told the isolation was meant to harden us, to strip us of weakness and turn us into men the world could depend on. I thought I was ready for the discipline, the drills, the punishments. I was wrong. What I wasn't ready for was the silence. Silence so heavy, it felt alive. Silence broken by whispers. Whispers that came at 2 a.m. The camp was nothing more than rows of wooden barracks, a mess hall that always smelled of cabbage and boiled meat, and a training field buried in snow. On the far edge stood a crooked watchtower, though no one ever seemed to climb it. Beyond the fences, there was nothing but white wilderness stretching into the horizon. Our days were brutal. Wake at 5, drills until our muscles screamed, marches through knee-deep snow, weapons training, punishment runs for even the smallest mistake. Sweat froze into our fatigues, breath billowed in clouds, and every night we collapsed into our bunks like broken machines. But night never brought peace. The barracks creaked and groaned in the wind. Frost climbed the windows, ice cracking across the glass like veins. And when the lanterns went out, the silence pressed down on us, smothering, suffocating. That was when the whispers began. At first, I told myself it was nothing. The wind through the cracks. The shuffling of exhausted men in their sleep. But one night, I woke with a jolt and knew I wasn't imagining it. A voice. Soft, low, and close. Whispering my name. I held my breath, eyes wide in the darkness, my ears straining. The barracks was full of sleeping bodies, their breath slow and steady. No one was awake. No one but me. And then came the knock. 1, 2, 3, faint taps against the frozen glass of the window beside my bed. I didn't look. I couldn't. My heart hammered so hard it drowned out everything else. I pulled the blanket over my head like a child, shivering not from the cold, but from the certainty that something was standing outside in the snow. Something waiting. When the clock struck 2 a.m., the knocking stopped. It was Private Daniel who died first. He was the youngest among us, barely 19, with a smile too soft for the army. Always the first to crack a joke, always the one humming under his breath during marches. One morning, we found him stiff in his bunk. His eyes were wide, his mouth frozen open in a silent scream. No wounds. No signs of struggle. Just sheer, paralyzing terror etched across his face. The officers dismissed it. Exhaustion, they said. Heart failure, they told us. But we weren't fools. We saw the frost clinging to his lashes. The ice on his lips. It was as though death itself had frozen him from within. And then came the rumor. The one detail none of us could ignore. He died at 2 a.m. After Daniel's death, none of us slept the same again. The officers tried to keep us in line, barking orders louder, punishing hesitation more severely, but fear was something they couldn't drill out of us. It seeped into our bones, quiet and poisonous, like the cold itself. I began to notice small things. The way the temperature would drop suddenly just before 2. The way frost spread thicker across the windows near that hour, even though the stove glowed with dying embers. And the whispers, they grew clearer. At first, it was just my name. But now I could hear other voices. Sometimes they called for William, other times for Michael or David. The whispers were soft, mournful, and desperate, as though whoever spoke was lost in the snow and begging to be let inside. One night, I made the mistake of looking. Moonlight poured across the white grounds outside. The snow shimmered like glass. And there, standing just beyond the barracks, was a woman. Her hair was dark, stiff with frost, her uniform torn and stained, her skin pale against the night. She didn't move. She just stood, staring, her hollow eyes fixed on the windows. When the clock struck 2, she faded into the storm, dissolving like mist. We might have gone mad from fear if it hadn't been for Sergeant Miller. He was an older man, scar on his cheek, eyes that carried the weight of too many winters. One evening, when the whispers had rattled us more than usual, he finally spoke. "This land has a history," he said, his voice low so the officers wouldn't hear. "During the last war, this camp wasn't a training ground. It was a field hospital." We leaned closer, spoons frozen halfway to our mouths. "There was a nurse stationed here. Kind, dedicated. They say she treated men like us when they were broken and bleeding. But some of those men betrayed her. No one knows exactly why. Maybe she discovered something she shouldn't have. Maybe it was cruelty for its own sake. Either way, they killed her. Buried her under the snow without a marker. Forgotten." He looked around the mess hall, his jaw tight. "They say she comes back at 2 a.m., the hour of her death, searching for justice. Or vengeance." No one laughed. Not one of us dared. Because we all knew Daniel had died at 2. From then on, discipline unraveled. Soldiers who could march for hours through blizzards without complaint now flinched at shadows. We slept in shifts, keeping lanterns lit, rifles within reach. But deep down, we knew no weapon could protect us. One night, Private Michael swore he felt a hand on his shoulder. When he turned, no one was there, but the sleeve of his uniform was wet, as though touched by snow. Another, Private John, heard boots crunching outside his window. Heavy, deliberate steps moving slowly through the snow. But when we rushed outside in the morning, the ground was untouched, smooth, white, and undisturbed. We were breaking. Fear was eating us alive. And then another soldier vanished. Private William was gone when dawn came. His bed empty, his boots neatly by his bunk. He hadn't taken his rifle, hadn't left a note. We searched the grounds, calling his name until our voices cracked. That's when we found the tracks. Footprints in the snow. Small. Bare. Not a man's. They led away from the barracks, delicate and deliberate. Beside them were drag marks. We followed them until the trail disappeared into the forest, swallowed by the storm. But William never returned. The officers said nothing. They tightened the drills, increased the punishments, but avoided the barracks at night. They knew. The ghost was real. And she wanted more. I couldn't take it anymore. Fear gnawed at me worse than hunger, worse than the cold. So I decided to face her. One night, I stayed awake, my rifle clutched in trembling hands though I knew bullets would do nothing. The barracks was silent, the lantern casting weak shadows across the wooden walls. The clock ticked closer to 2. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it might wake the others. And then, I saw her. Not outside. Inside. She stood at the far end of the barracks, her figure pale and shivering, her uniform torn, her face bloodless but filled with sorrow. Her eyes found mine, and for the first time, I felt the full weight of her grief. She lifted a trembling hand and pointed, straight at me. Her lips moved, her voice thin as snow in the wind. "Buried, beneath." The lantern sputtered and went out. Darkness swallowed everything. The next morning, I told the others what I'd seen. Some scoffed. Some stayed silent. But David and Michael believed me, they had felt her presence too. Together we agreed, if she wanted something buried beneath, we had to find it. So, when the officers marched us into drills that afternoon, we slipped away. On the far edge of camp, where the snow piled deepest, we dug. Our shovels bit into the frozen ground, the sound sharp and unnatural against the silence. For hours, nothing. Just dirt, rock, and ice. But then, David's shovel struck wood. We froze. Hearts pounding. Together we scraped the snow aside until a box emerged. Old, splintered, rotting. The stench that spilled out when we pried it open was unbearable. Inside, tangled in the remnants of a nurse's uniform, were bones. Human bones. A rusted medical badge clung to the fabric, still faintly legible beneath the decay. We staggered back, choking. None of us spoke. We didn't need to. We had found her. She wasn't a rumor. She wasn't madness. She was real. And she had been here all along. We should have told the officers. We should have handed the box over, demanded answers. But we didn't. Maybe we were afraid they'd cover it up. Maybe we were too scared to speak. Or maybe, deep down, we knew it wasn't about them. It was about us. That night, none of us slept. We sat in the barracks with our rifles across our laps, lanterns lit, waiting. The air was thick, heavy, the silence like a storm pressing against the walls. The clock ticked closer to 2. The temperature dropped. Frost spread across the windows, climbing like veins of ice. Our breath came out in clouds. The lantern flames shrank, fighting against the dark. And then, she appeared. Not in mist. Not outside. But fully, terribly real. Her pale figure shimmered in the dim light, her hair stiff with frost, her torn uniform clinging to brittle bones. Her hollow eyes swept across us, and in them I saw not anger, but endless grief. She raised a trembling hand and whispered, "Justice." The ground beneath the barracks groaned. The lanterns extinguished one by one. Shadows swallowed the room. The air grew so cold it burned my lungs. Men screamed, scrambled, prayed. I clutched my rifle though I knew it was useless. She stepped closer. Her hand reached out, not for me, not for any of us, but toward the floor. Toward the earth that had hidden her for so long. And then, she was gone. At dawn, we carried her remains outside. The storm had quieted. The snow lay heavy, the world hushed as though holding its breath. Together we dug a proper grave, deeper than the officers would have allowed, and laid her bones to rest. We marked the spot with stones, whispering prayers we half remembered from childhood. I don't know if she heard us. I don't know if it mattered. But as the wind swept across the camp, I thought I saw her, just for a moment. Standing among the trees. Watching. Her hollow eyes softer now. Almost at peace. And then, like snow dissolving in sunlight, she vanished. Life at the camp went on. The drills continued. The punishments never ceased. We were soldiers, and soldiers don't speak of ghosts. Daniel and William were listed as accidents, disappearances the officers never explained. The rest of us stayed silent. But the whispers were gone. The frost no longer crept across the windows at 2 a.m. The silence was still heavy, but no longer alive. Still, sometimes, when I lie awake in the dark, I swear I hear faint footsteps crunching in the snow. A woman's voice humming softly, carried by the wind. And I know she's still here. Not with vengeance. Not with anger. But with sorrow. Because the past never truly stays buried. Not in war. Not in snow. Not at 2 a.m.